to the May 6th, 2025 meeting of the St. Pete Beach Finance and Budget Committee. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call, please.
Member Polanowski?
Here.
Member English?
Here.
Chair Samarajik?
Here.
We have a quorum.
I'd like to introduce Kathy English, who is a new member of the Finance and Budget Review Committee, representing the Paso Grill area. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Are there any changes to the agenda? Anybody proposing any changes to the agenda?
No.
No changes to the agenda. If not, we will proceed with the agenda.
Thank you, board members. So my name is Frances Robustelli. I'm your city manager. And today I did want to start off by introducing our new city clerk, Renee Rose. Warm welcome. Today is her second day. So she's in transition with our deputy city clerk. So today we have the first of 5 presentations for you. And you, as you most of you know, I'm relatively new to the city. I started last July. And Devin Schmidt is now our new finance director. And so we've gone on a journey of starting to pull together all of the assets in the city and expenses, and really want to start telling the story of what does it cost to run a city, not just in a year one budget, but from a 10, 20-year perspective of capital infrastructure and other needs that may exist for whatever reason. So today, we're going to start to lay the foundation. You may get a little bit of sticker shock because we have managed to pull together all the costs to essentially replace, maintain, and invest in into our capital programs is where you're going to see quite a bit of a picture of what our true costs and operations of the city assets are. So this is not a final budget. This is the beginning to start to get a sense from you all where your priorities are as we bring forward recommendations from you to the commission. This also will probably be all of yours first time going through this intense of a process. The finance committee did ask us to engage more than last year. We had quite a bit of staff transition, so there was only one meeting with this committee prior to bringing the recommended budget. So we're hopeful that this process this year is more engaging and that you find it meaningful, and we appreciate your time in advance. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our finance director.
Thank you, Frances. Sorry, I was just trying to figure out how to work the microphone. So could I have the presentation, please? And while we're pulling up that presentation, I'm Devin Schmidt. I'm the finance director. I've been here almost 2 months now, so pretty new to the city of St. Pete Beach. Happy to be here. As Frances laid the foundation for you, we're going to walk through the budget and steps this year. So we're going to start off with looking at a calendar and planning for the committee. So what our expectations are and what our hope is for the Finance Budget Review Committee. We'll show you kind of staff's role, commission's role, your role as part of this process. We're going to walk through some of the historical financial overview, talk about some of the reserve analysis, look at the initial capital improvement plan presentation, which Frances shared that there is some absolute sticker shock on the ask or the requirements that are needed. Obviously, when we bring forward this budget later on for commission approval in the coming months, it'll be a balanced budget. So just wanted to reiterate that piece. And then what we're looking from the committee is just a committee recommendation for commission moving forward off of this budget workshop. We'll take them through the same budget workshop after y'all's review, and we'll just keep doing that throughout the process this year for 2026. So with that, just wanted to kick it off with some calendar, scope, and planning for the Finance Budget Committee, since this is our first meeting together. And so I like to just lay the foundation about the budget, and it's more than just a financial document. It's one of the most important things that the commission does approve every year, because it's defining and setting our spending limits. It's essential for us to be able to perform the services that the community expects. It's showing what our capital projects are for this year and the years forward. It's reflective, or it should be reflective of the commission's goals and the community priorities. It's really a storytelling and a one-year plan of what the city intends to accomplish with program services and capital projects. And it's the foundation. If we don't have the funding for a project or service, it's not going to carry forward. So it's really the starting point in planning for implementation for any year that we're looking at that process. So with that, this is the changes that we were talking about. So staff has initiated the budget process. We're at the stage for this first budget workshop, and we'll do this 5 times, as Francis said. So we'll bring forward what staff has put forward, and then the Finance Budget Review Committee has the opportunity to review it and can provide a recommendation to the commission from this committee. The commission will receive the budget workshop format in a very similar fashion, but with that they will also have your recommendation as a committee. And then anything that the commission provides for recommended changes, or that this group provides for recommended changes, and staff will implement and bring those recommendations. And so we'll do that through each one of those workshops until we get to that final commission approval later in September. So I don't want your eyes to glaze over too much with what our staff calendar planning is, but I think it's important for the commission and the community to understand that the budget process requires the department heads input for operating capital and personnel. They're the ones that are responsible for carrying out the operations of each department, each capital project. And so you can see throughout here that as staff has different deadlines and completion dates, then that's really what triggers us to bring back more information to this budget review committee and then onto the commission. So I won't spend too much time on this slide, but you can see kind of our end goal there is when we're submitting this up to the trim for after the final approval in September. So what we were hoping to accomplish here is just a reflection and what we're hoping to model this Finance Budget Review Committee based on the information and feedback that we got from the commission. So the commission agreed, that the purpose of this team is to provide recommendations to the city commission on financial budget matters in accordance with the city charter. That the committee's responsibility is carried out through budget workshops and reviews, and that we have that advisory role offering recommendations without that regulatory or policy oversight. So our objective is to, by having all of these different workshops, that we're ensuring that the budget process is transparent, efficient, and aligned with community priorities, and this gives opportunities for the public to have this as an avenue for hearing the presentation on the budget, but then also at the commission meetings as well. So just inlaying those additional areas of opportunities for community engagement in the budget process. So this is the calendar that I believe Jenny sent out to this team. So we're here today looking at the budget workshop number 1 with the focus on the historical financial overview, reserve analysis, and the initial capital improvement plan. At the next meeting, we'll bring back an updated capital improvement plan and position listing and benefits. So what positions are we going to be asking for in the 26 budget process? What is our benefit projections, and what are the costs associated with that? And then an updated capital improvement plan based on any new information that we have or any of the areas where we're looking to balance the budget. After that, in July, you'll receive a preliminary budget. So that will have the operating, the capital, all of the positions, and all of those pieces and parts together. And then later on, we'll go into the ad valorem tax analysis and the preliminary budget book with any summary of changes that have occurred. And then finally, we'll have the tentative budget book and any summary of changes from the previous version. So again, we're gonna take this piece by piece as we're working through the budget this year. And so appreciate the opportunity. So I won't spend too much time on this because it's the same information that you just saw, but after each one of these, the commission will then have the ability to go through the same content that we did, but with that, they'll have your recommendation as part of that. So jumping into our historical financial overview, I did want to lead with just some challenges that make this year and this budget process a bit unprecedented. We are obviously experiencing hurricane impacts related to property tax revenues and our parking revenues. So from October to December, the parking participation or that traffic that we would typically expect was less. So therefore, that's going to reduce those revenues. As it relates to the property tax, the unknowns around any vacant homesteads, those folks would not be contributing that property tax, so therefore that creates an unknown for us at this point. We experienced a lot of damage from the storms where the city paid for capital projects and for recovery, and the unknown that we have currently is when we'll receive some of those FEMA reimbursements. To date, we've received $3.8 million, and that was related to the initial response to that, but beyond some of those areas and some of those projects that we would expect to receive reimbursement for, sometimes those can lag 5 to 7 years, for example. And then the tariff impacts, this is something that our team has been looking at. So just understanding, you know, if we have vehicles or equipment that we need to purchase, what are the impacts going to be there? If we have capital projects that include steel or concrete or things of that nature, how are those impacts going to create an additional cost? And then the general fund subsidies to the enterprise fund. So this particular one we'll take a deeper dive into later in the presentation, but just wanted this group to understand that the general fund subsidizing those enterprise funds, which I'll explain what those are in a few slides, but that's not in line with best practices. Those enterprise funds, wastewater, sewer, stormwater, should be able to operate like a business where they have the funding that they need. We're getting the correct fees that we need in order to sustain those. So that'll be something that you'll see throughout this presentation. So started with the bad news, and now the good news is that we do have some long-term considerations and some strategic plans as we move forward. So first of all is we're undergoing a fee and impact study for our enterprise fund revenues. So that's for us to be able to understand what those fees and those impacts should be. We need to get to a point as a city where we have good 10-year financial forecasts. So that's looking at operating personnel, the capital projects, and what is that long-term plan for the city from a financial standpoint. We are going to be looking to implement reserve policies. Our funds currently do not have a reserve policy where it would say we need to hold aside this certain amount for emergencies, or we can hold aside these other amounts for capital projects as they come down the line. So that's another piece that we'll be looking at. We're also working on just doing implementation of best budget practices by the Government Finance Officers Association. So you'll see in this budget process where we're looking to have strategic plan alignment with each of the funds that are being put forward. What that does is it's able for us to showcase back to the community and the commission that we understand what your priorities are and here's how those are being funded. So that's one example, and we will be getting our budget into a place where we could submit that to the Government Finance Officers Association for their annual Distinguished Budget Award. So currently we're not there today, but that is where we're headed. Revenue diversification, so there's certain revenues, and we'll take a deeper dive into this in the next slides, but there's revenues that we have a lever we can pull at the local level, and then we have revenues that are controlled at the county or the state level. And so with that, it creates opportunities where we could say, we're going to go out for grant funding for a specific project, or what do our fees look like in those enterprise funds versus our ad valorem taxes, where that's at a higher level of control. So just wanted to kind of share some of those strategic long-term considerations as we're building out the budget and as we're working through those 10-year financial forecasts. So this revenue slide, or this pie chart, is a breakdown of the ad valorem taxes that Pinellas County provides to the city of St. Pete Beach. So you can see that 38% of that is from single-family homes, 24% is from condominiums, and then 13% is collected by the hotels, motels. What we don't have the data on yet, and which we will be bringing back at a future presentation, is how many of the single-family homes or the condominiums are homesteaded versus not homestead. So we'll bring that forward for this group to see as well. But since this is the largest bucket of funding that we have in the general fund, just wanted this committee to be able to understand how that revenue breaks down. So this is a listing of all of our revenues in the general fund over $100,000. So you can see there that that ad valorem tax is the largest bucket of funding that the city of St. Pete Beach receives. That column that's listed as 2025 is what we have collected to date. So you can see our intention and what we were budgeting, we're short on that currently. So that's where we're saying we have some unknowns as it's related to the hurricane impacts. The parking facilities is another area where we're showing a down from what we expected to collect. And then some of those other ones, like the county EMS reimbursement, that particular one we expect to receive full reimbursement for. That's for our EMS that the city of St. Pete Beach provides, and the county covers the cost of that. Some of these other areas, you can see like that half-cent sales tax. That's not an area that the city of St. Pete Beach could say, hey, we're going to go out for a sales tax, for example. That's controlled at the higher state and county level. So as we're walking through some of these areas, I just thought it was important to kind of share some historical revenues that are some of the bigger fundings that we receive in the general fund. Some additional options for opportunities for revenue diversification. So we do, there is an opportunity based on the ballot language and how the bed tax is collected by Pinellas County, that we could receive some of that for beach maintenance. I talked about the fee and impact studies, other grant opportunities. So looking to see if we have a project that would be considered shovel ready and that we could submit up to the state or the federal government for grant opportunities, and then other fees when we're thinking about areas such as our recreation services and things of that nature. So there are some opportunities for additional revenue diversification, but just wanted to have that as a slide for you guys to see. So earlier I mentioned that the general fund subsidizing the proprietary funds, also known as enterprise funds or utility funds. That is certainly not a best practice, as those should be self-sustaining. They should operate like a business. And so to date, in St. Pete Beach, we have wastewater, reclaimed water, stormwater, and multimodal. All of those are currently having a subsidy from the general fund to cover operations and capital projects within those funds. So the fee study and the impact study would provide us analysis to understand, are we charging enough for operations? What does that capital picture look like? And what opportunities do we have there? So just wanted this group to understand that component. So as we're diving into the general fund, you can see here, this is just a year-over-year actual. So on that top section, we have our revenue, our expenditure, and then the net. You can see what we have historically budgeted compared to the actuals. With the actuals, you can also see that that net of the revenues we receive compared to what we spend, we are retaining funding and we are building a fund balance within the general fund. So that's a positive piece there and showing a healthy picture for our general fund year over year. As we look at wastewater, so just so everybody understands kind of the operations that happens within wastewater, so that is where we're able to maintain any of our city-owned wastewater collection systems, which consists of our 2.8 miles of force main, 41.5 miles of gravity lines, manholes, pump stations, all of those things that make the water run through the city. So here you can see on our planned expenditures for our revenue for 2023 on our budget, you can see that we planned to have a net of 897,000. What actually occurred was an increase to the fund balance of 194,000. And then the same thing as you're looking at the 2024 budget, that large expenditure amount would be capital projects that were put forward as part of the budget process. Where we ended up, we did end up putting in 1.874 million. Those capital projects still need to occur, and we would expect to see those as part of the 25 budget. I think it's important to note too that as we're moving through this, you'll see some areas where our actuals and our budgets seem to be very off from each other, and so that'll be a goal that we're working through as a finance department and as a city, is how do we bridge that where our actuals are a lot more in line with what we plan for in our budget process.
Did you want questions after the presentation, or
Let's just do them through, because
so you said that we had to put in $1.8 million, but this looks like it's reading 9.2 is in revenues, 7.3 is in expenses. That means that we had a surplus.
Yes, correct. Yes, correct. But what we were planning was to have a deficit of 1.6 or 5.6, excuse me. Yeah, please, I'm sorry, I should have led with that. Please stop me and ask questions. It'll be more engaging that way. Okay, so reclaimed water. So this fund is set aside to operate, repair, and maintain the city's reclaimed water system. This is with a contract that we have with Pinellas County Utilities. So we service approximately 2,900 customers, 2.8 million of gallons of water per day. And so you can see here when we're looking at the financial picture that our planned budget was to have a net of $900,000 for 2023. In reality, we had a net of $414,000. So in 2024, a similar picture where we were planning to have a net or a deficit in our budget, and in reality, it was $216,000. So again, with these enterprise funds, we should be able to have the revenues that we're collecting and the expenditures offsetting each other, running much more like a business enterprise fund would. And stormwater, so this fund is set aside to operate, repair, maintain the storm system for our drain and our inlets, our manholes, our conveyance system. Again, here, you can see that in 2023, in actuality for both the revenue and the expenditures, we had a positive net increase to that fund balance. In 2024, the budget was planned to go into the negative 432,000, and the actuals around 395,000 was what actually occurred. So again, as we're moving forward as a city and as a finance department, you'll see us getting those budgetary numbers or what we had planned for, and the actuals a lot closer.
So looking at the revenues on this, just strictly revenues, we're looking at 4.69 million, and we've only received revenues of 1.3. Just for forward thought, why is there such a deficit in budget versus actual in the revenues?
So without having that information directly in front of me, my sense is that there was a transfer or an offset from the general fund that probably didn't occur because it wasn't needed. But I can certainly follow up with an answer on that because that's a great question. So in our building fund, so this has everything that contributes for all of our building codes and our city ordinances. Again, you can see in 2023 that we are bringing in enough revenue to sustain the expenditures that we have. In 2024, we had a planned deficit of $240,000. In reality, we retained $2.2 million in revenues, 1.2 in expenditures, and we put back $984,000 in the fund balance. So our fleet fund, this is just a fund that's really has an accounting mechanism behind it by which all of our governmental funds make contribution for any planned future vehicle replacements. So you can see here in 23 and in 24 that the planned, if we were planning on going into the net for these expenditures, that there would have been a fund balance from prior year contributions from the general fund departments for that. So the resiliency fund, so this was created in 2023 with the intention to help position the city for long-term infrastructure improvements related to sea level rises. So this includes 50% of the fiscal year's 2023 estimated increase in property tax growth as a transfer from the general fund. And so each year and thereafter, the plan was to have that additional estimated increase of property tax growth come into this fund. You can see in 2024 there wasn't a planned revenue into the fund, and you can see what the result was as far as expenditures and budgets there. Hope you can see the 2023 CIP. I apologize for that being small. What we're looking at here, and for the community to understand, is that this has the penny for Pinellas. So the penny for Pinellas is what the city receives to pay for these capital projects, and these are anything from seawall maintenance to playgrounds to fire station, parking improvements, IT improvements, any resiliency projects. So I just wanted to show what the budget and actual was and what we were able to accomplish and complete in 2023. That total bottom line there, you can see that we had expected to spend $22 million. In reality, we completed around $4.8 million in projects. So similar picture for 2024. Again, that penny for Pinellas is the primary revenue source along with any other grants receivables or a transfer from the general fund if needed. Again, you can see a similar picture here where we had planned to complete $25 million in capital projects, and in reality we were at 7.1. So the multimodal fund, this fund is set aside for our impact fees. They're intended to recover the cost of servicing new development. So you can see here that our revenues in 2023 and 2024 are budgeted to be very similar. You can see on an actual basis, though, that we have some room for improvement on how we're budgeting for those collections and what the expenditures are compared to what we're bringing in. Okay, any other additional questions before I jump into the next section?
The bed tax, we don't get anything from the bed tax, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, and there's a possibility we could get something from the bed tax.
That is what they're discussing at the state level right now. Just to be clear, the bed tax doesn't come directly to us, but on average over the last 10 years, the county has contributed about $1.2 million annually to do the beach renourishment.
Have we set up anybody for looking at grant opportunities? The history of the city has been bouncing back and forth from someone that had that official responsibility to no official responsibility? Do we plan on effectively having someone responsible for grants?
We actually have a management analyst now in public services that one of her primary responsibilities is grant
Okay.
seeking and applications. The commission also authorized us recently to extend our contract with our state lobbyist and to engage in a new contract services with a federal lobbyist for 2 years. So those teams now are collaborating with the city team to make sure that we're looking for every grant opportunity we can. And if needed for grant writing assistance, we could contract out that service for a more complicated grant.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so to end of this next section, this is talking just about some of our reserve considerations. So the city is working with our financial advisor as well as bond counsel to determine whether or not an emergency bridge loan to backfill operations would be a good opportunity for the city of St. Pete Beach. That is only for operations, so that won't cover any of the capital needs that the city currently has, but should that come to fruition, that would come back to the commission at a later date. Again, those FEMA timing for reimbursements, the initial storm recovery was very expensive, and so how are those backfills going to change our reserves in the long term and the near term? And then just the fact that we don't currently have any reserve policies or an investment policy as far as how we're doing some of the management of the reserves and what that looks like. So that'll be something that we'll bring forward at a later date for commission and potentially committee recommendation on some of those policies.
At one time, we had a bridge loan agreement with Wells Fargo Bank. I guess that no longer exists.
I'm not aware of that, but we could certainly look in. So your understanding was maybe it was an open, similar to an open line of credit?
10 million, yeah.
Okay, we'll definitely check into that and follow up.
With Wells Fargo at one point.
Thank you. So this slide is showing our 2025 budget comparison by fund and by fiscal impact. So what's up at the top there is that you can see our 9/30/2024 beginning fund balances. Those beginning fund balances are currently unaudited. We're working with our auditors to complete our 24 audit by the June 30 deadline for the state. You can also see as far as revenues, what we have for budgeted, any amendments that we would put forth, and then that transfer in of that 4.9 million is the ARPA revenues. The American Rescue Plan Act funds that the city of St. Pete Beach had received. You can see the expenditures, and then that large $11.8 million is the transfer out that's going into the other enterprise funds or the fleet fund for usage. So wanted to highlight some areas where we have some changes in that estimated ending fund balance. So that FEMA reimbursement, I spoke about the 3.8 million that we receive for the initial response. In wastewater, we expect to receive $2 million for pump station number 1, which was a grant. And then if we needed to, we are exploring the opportunity to utilize that emergency bridge loan as a lever to pull for some of these other operational areas. So. Okay, any questions before I jump to the next section? Okay, so in our capital overview, staff has put forth a capital improvement plan, and the projects are currently prioritized as repair, restore with resiliency, or an amenity or an enhancement. This presentation is going to outline all of the capital needs. The staff will not recommend, obviously, to put forward all of these capital projects given our funding constraints. Historically, many critical infrastructure projects have been off the priority list due to funding constraints, and the result is just a very large list of unfunded capital projects. So This is looking at 2026 through 2030, all of the capital improvement projects, and any of those necessary projects to restore the aging infrastructure, and includes community amenity enhancements that will be delayed due to the priority of infrastructure. So that's how staff is looking at these capital projects, is to consider repair and restore first, and then look at any amenity enhancements. So in our general fund, I talked a little bit about this, but you can see for 2026, we looked at a couple projects that would potentially have FEMA reimbursement. The likelihood of us receiving that in 26 is low, but that does contribute to the financial forecast in the picture, so we did include that in there. You can see we have some project-specific grants. So one of the projects we have in here is around our IT infrastructure, so $100,000 for a grant potential. The one that's listed as fire grant, that would be for Fire Station 22. And then Public Services has about $1.5 million in their projects. And then you can see in 2025, we had a $6.1 million transfer from the general fund for revenue. So this is a picture of what we're showing for the next few fiscal years, obviously with the focus on 2026. And at this point, it would be helpful to note that we do have some of the department directors, so if you have any project-specific questions, they'll probably be more equipped to answer those questions for you. But I'll take you through the presentation, and feel free to just stop me and we can pull them up here as needed. So as we're looking at what is included for the general fund, we have this broken out into different categories. So beaches, we have some projects in here that are looking at things like dune and beach restorations, dune walkovers, and then in our IT category, so we have some items such as IT innovation, citywide camera security, disaster recovery, infrastructure resiliency. We have some software applications included in here as well. And then in our parks, we have the Bella Vista Mini Park improvements, Egan Park site improvements, and the fishing piers rehabilitation. The items that we have in orange are projects that could potentially be pushed out in a future year if they needed to, so you can see that prioritization.
Question about the city-wide security cameras.
Yeah.
Is that what does that entail? How big a project, and what are we going to take pictures of? And
Yeah. Candace Galloway, Director of IT
Right.
for the city. So the intent behind the camera and security system is initially, and the priority is replacing the existing system we have. So we have.
okay, we do exist.
We do. We have a badge security system that allows us access to most of our buildings and facilities. Some do not have, they're not badged, so they don't have the same security system installed. So one is going to be to remediate that and have the same system throughout and ensure that we have those systems in place for every building, so that everyone coming in and out is secured, supposed to be there, and then we're managing that access effectively. The current system is aging, it's very old, and it needs to be replaced regardless of how far we go with the cameras. So currently that system does not have cameras baked into it. So the intent is to replace the security system and expand the solution to include cameras. And we haven't laid out all of the entrance and exits at the facilities for the cameras, but that's something we would do as part of that scoping exercise.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
May I ask for more clarity around the fishing piers rehabilitation, please?
Yeah. Fishing piers rehabilitation. I could try to pull some information
know
up.
which ones they
Trying to-
are,
Yeah,
because there's
I
a lot
don't know
of
those.
safety issues going on out there right now.
First Street, yeah, that first half, if I'm not mistaken.
First,
And that has not gone out to bid yet, but I've got the document that we're going to be working on, but that's all I've got.
Okay. If that's accurate, so First Street Pier, one of the things we're wrestling with is because there are so many needs, some of the piers may fall down on the list as far as what staff's recommending, so this is why it's important for you all to have the conversation. But we can certainly clarify that too, on what exactly those pier projects are.
Yeah, my concern is there are a lot of tourists that are fishing from piers that are missing boards and things, and it's a safety issue in my opinion.
Yeah, we can make a note to follow up on that.
Thank you.
Do we own that pier? I know there was, about 2 years ago, I think it was, there was we didn't know if we owned the pier or if, I think the state or the county owned the pier.
I
Did we
think
get a
the
resolution
Mary
on that?
Pier is different.
The First
Fishing
Street,
pier, yeah, First Street pier.
we rehabbed that whole thing because it had been,
So that is ours.
well, we went through a process of determining who owns it.
Right.
And we found out that I think the county owned it. Then as I recall, we took possession and completed the repairs
Okay.
and made it a viable fishing pier again. Spent the bucks. But then the storm came along, so we don't have a fishing pier. At least it's not the same as it was. So it was rehabbed and it's now damaged.
We'll follow up on that too and just confirm for you.
Yeah. Okay, the presentation, please. Thank you. Okay. So moving on, this is our large list of public services projects. So within here, you can see that we have projects such as the 80th Avenue Living Shore Wall. We have the Community Center seawall replacement, the Don Cesar boat ramp replacement, the facility emergency backup power generator, facility HVAC system, LED lighting conversions, Fire Station 22. That's a very large project in there at $12 million. Some painting projects, mechanical tools and equipment, Pass a Grill, seawall replacement at $8 million, public restroom improvements, and public services building improvements, as well as the shoreline protection improvements in the public services operations yard expansion. Again, the items that are highlighted in that kind of salmon orange color would be ones that in order to balance the budget, we could push those out to future years, but wanted to include the full list as we've discussed. So any questions on some of these public services projects?
Yeah, Don Cesar boat ramp replacement can probably be, I know it's a very controversial topic, but, you know, that's one thing I think that could be pushed forward. It works as a boat ramp now, but I know there have been meetings and discussions, but it's, in my mind, it's probably something we could put off.
Fire Station 22. What's the plan until this is complete?
Sorry, you weren't talking, so. Adam Porter, Assistant City Manager. So we did have a temporary facility that was down just south of the Don Vista Center. That was procured by the state, so that contract ran out and then the cost shifted to us. The cost was astronomical for that structure. So you probably saw that one go away in the last couple of days. We have a new structure that's coming in the next week or so. Probably by about the 15th or 16th of May, it'll be operational. It'll look more like a double-wide trailer. It'll actually be a much nicer facility for fractions of the cost of what the old facility was. But again, a lot of those costs are also being submitted to FEMA for reimbursement. So our hope is that even the monthly cost for that temporary facility would be eligible for FEMA reimbursement.
Same place?
It's going to be in the same place, yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have to rent that? Do we rent?
We do, yeah. So that's one of those things that the money's coming out. We're expending the money ahead of time, and then we're submitting that for reimbursement through FEMA. So we've already done all the paperwork to do that. But once the cost shifted to us, yes.
Okay. And are we including that in the numbers that we have, the rental, while we're, or?
That would be included on the operational side, so you'll see that in the operational budget.
Okay. And because FEMA is supposed to reimburse us? They're supposed to reimburse us for this, right? Or are we asking?
It is an eligible project by FEMA standards, and we've done the process to submit it for reimbursement, yes, sir.
It's just basically going to be a pass-through. So
Well, I think that's only for the first 2 years following the storm.
Yeah, again, it's all about the timing of when the new station would come online, but we'll, obviously, we're trying to maximize the amount of time that FEMA would reimburse us, so we're trying to speed the process up as quick as possible to minimize the cost of the taxpayers.
okay, so that obviously cannot be pushed back at all.
And the existing facility has not been demolished yet.
It has not, and that's, again, the FEMA process is pretty challenging, so it has been approved for demolition by the commission. We do have an approved contract, but we can't demo it until FEMA gives us a thumbs up that we can demo it. So hopeful in the next month or so, but there's quite a process for that.
Okay. Understood.
The 35,000 for that, I'm sorry, I know you just sat down. Is that part of the architect fees and because I think it's like 35,000,
Oh, can we have the presentation back up, please? Thank you.
35,000, is that basically the design of it?
The 35,000 you see is actually the demo of the building, so that's the cost for the demo. Yep.
And just to make note, even if it's in the white category right now of not being shaded by salmon, this is just our beginning of prioritization of how we might have to cut some of the projects that are actually shaded in white. We just started that initial prioritization exercise. And on the Fire Station 22, it's important to note that the reason we can't demo yet is because we're working on a replacement project request with FEMA, because it can't be replaced like for like, and that's how they determine reimbursement amounts. If we're approved, we're hoping to get more funding. So that's why in this instance, it's good to be patient and wait a little bit longer until they make their final decision.
Can we do the architectural, planning of it now?
Yes, so we can do all the planning. We're hiring a construction manager. So we're moving that project forward in hopes that.
Started architectural work last year.
It did,
Should
correct.
that be in 2025 though, in here? Or does it go to work in construction progress, get bundled together, and then all go to 2026?
We likely need to increase this dollar amount
Okay.
once we get that construction contract management bid back.
Okay, so looking at streets, we have Boca Ciega Drive reconstruction at $4.8 million. That is highlighted in green as a priority project for the city. And then you can see we have other items in here, including bridge rehabilitation, Corey Avenue signage. We have the Gulfway rehabilitation, Gulf Winds Drive reconstruction, hurricane damage right-of-way rehabilitation, and roadway rehabilitation, as well as Shell Alley improvements. And then we have the Vina Del Mar bridge lighting replacements as a potential that we could look to push.
Yeah, and also the Corey Avenue monument signs, I think would be in
Yes.
salmon.
May I ask what the Shell Alley improvements are?
I believe most of our shell alleys are actually in the Pass-A-Grille.
Yes,
That's what I was suspecting, just checking.
yeah, they are. And it's an annual maintenance issue. It's been going on for years and years and years and years and years.
Yes.
If it's annual and it seems to be repair and maintenance, should it really be capital item?
So the items that we're including in here is anything over $20,000 that we would have as a capital consideration. Depending on whether it ends up being an asset at the end of the day, that likely isn't. It would be an expense, but we include it as part of our capital budget.
Okay.
I know this is a crazy question, but is this the new thing they're doing down there with the new boards, or is this just replacing Shell? Or do we know? 'Cause
We'll have to follow up.
The former Public Works Director had found a process that the Army Corps of Engineers used someplace, I think in airfields, where they laid down something under the shell and it increased the life of the shell alleys. I remember the discussions, and they actually implemented it in some of the alleys. Now, was it effective? I don't know.
We'll follow up
It's
for
not
you.
on my street.
Okay.
Okay. So this is where it's good that we're all sitting down. You can see the amount of change in ending fund balance if we were to put forward this total capital budget, and this is just in our general 301 fund. So you can see total revenues we're showing at about 13.3 million with expenditure total of 50.4 million. With those future years, obviously, this continues to compound, and that fund balance continues to go into the negative, obviously. This is not a budget that we would put forward or recommend, but just wanted the committee to have the understanding of the needs.
If we don't do something, this is it. If we don't take some action and put forward some realistic budgets, we'll be faced with this.
So moving on into our reclaimed water fund, you will see here just a projection as we're looking at the operating and as well as the reclaimed water service charges. So you can see that's the primary revenue generator for this fund. In 2025, we did do a $400,000 transfer to cover the fund so that it was not in a deficit. That operating expense forecast is just a forecast in nature with an escalator on it. So that'll change when you get the operating budget, but just wanted you to be aware. But we do have two capital projects slated for 2026 at $500,000 and $200,000 for a lateral service pipe replacement as well as a pig port installation. And you can see there that, you know, we would require at least a $321,000 subsidy to this reclaimed water fund since we do not have enough revenue generating to even cover operations without the investment income. So just wanted to provide that picture of how the revenues are not enough, even sufficient to cover the operating expenses that exist in this fund.
There was a plan at one point put forth by Pinellas County Utilities to meter reclaimed water. I don't know if that's proceeding, but that would be another expense we'd be faced with.
Okay, so looking at our stormwater, we have two revenue streams in there. So just wastewater charges for services and the stormwater tier 2 assessment at $1.2 million approximately of revenue generation with an operating expense of around $500,000 to $600,000 depending on the year. We do have some larger capital requests in this 26 budget. So you can see the Don Cesar Boca Chica area resiliency adaptation at $30.1 million. Stormwater system cleaning and inspection at $800,000 and watershed management master plan at $125,000. So while the revenues for the operations are self-sustaining, there's not enough funding to do the capital projects that are put forward. This is our wastewater fund. So you can see primary revenue source for that is the wastewater charges for services. And here you can see that we do have that grant for Pump Station 1 in 2025, as well as a transfer fund of transfer of $3.8 million. So with our operating expenditures at about $5.9 million to $6 million, and our revenue is around 7.6. Though you can see that there is enough here to cover the operations of wastewater, but again, we have a lot of capital needs. The ones that are listed in green for Pump Station 1 rehabilitation and the wastewater system cleaning inspections are ones that staff is putting forward as absolute priorities, but you can see that there's a lot of different projects through here that have pump and lift station rehabs as well as wastewater collection system improvements. So any questions on any of these projects?
A lot of them are priorities. There's no doubt about it.
So again, I know I covered this earlier, but these enterprise funds and these wastewater funds, this is why the city is doing the current fee study and that impact study. They really should operate like a business, and they shouldn't require a subsidy from the general fund. When we're looking at enterprise funds in the 26 budget, you will see that the parking fund will be pulled out as its own enterprise fund. That's for all the parking revenues that we receive. This is often a revenue generator, and there's no restrictions on the use of the revenue, so we'll be able to utilize that as we have in years past. But the wastewater, stormwater, and reclaimed water are not generating enough revenues currently to sustain all of the capital projects and needs, and in some cases operating as we showed in the prior slides. With that, wanted to provide just services that often do require subsidy. So transportation, a lot of times is not a revenue generating enterprise fund. It operates more of like a nonprofit, if you will. So you would expect that the general fund would cover those. Obviously, all of the general fund services, fire, EMS, recreation, all of those common activities in the general fund, roads, and amenities and programs. Those are typically your tax-based items, and you wouldn't expect those to operate like a business. You'd expect them to operate how our general fund currently is. So just wanted to provide just that educational opportunity on these differences within the funds that we're looking at today. And so with that, staff is looking for a committee recommendation that would align with completing our fee studies as quickly as possible and then looking to implement them. And then just our approach and looking for alignment with our capital projects prioritization so that failures, restorations are addressed first and then other projects. So that's what staff would be looking for as a committee recommendation from this team today. With our upcoming next budget review committee, just wanted to let you know what's coming down the pipeline. So on 6/4, we'll have an updated capital improvement plan. We can inlay and have our responses back to you about some of the questions that came up today. We'll also have our position listing and any benefits overviews for the committee to consider. And with that.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
After the bulk of the hurricane work is done, how many inspectors are we planning on having working for the city?
So that is something we're actually evaluating right now. We have funding we have funding through this for the next 12 months. We have funding coming out of the building reserve fund to essentially pay for 7 additional full-time staff that are working inside the building, as well as I believe 4 additional plans examiners and 4 additional building inspectors by contract. That's not sustainable, but what we're watching for is how many more permits are coming in. We do believe it's going to extend beyond the next 12 months. So we'll make that evaluation, and because that's the purpose of building revenue. We'll be using the building revenue to offset the need, but our hope is, I can tell you 100% we will not go back to the staffing model we had pre-storm.
Good. Good. We always evaluate and change. Have we ever thought about having a long-term rental permit for houses that are renting out, that they would have to be required to have a permit, pay an annual fee, and then that would contribute to the inspector's work? Because one of the issues that we had before the storms is we didn't have enough work to have more than 1 inspector. And that could be a downtime work. But what it also does is it protects our community from the bad actors that are renting their house out Airbnb for weekends, which we know happens sometimes, and it's hard. But if you pull that permit from them, then they can't rent their house out anymore.
I'll definitely add that for us to look into.
Did you want from us today a recommendation on priorities for capital projects?
So I think on the recommendation, a general recommendation that would be great is that staff is looking at this as restore, repair, and then look at those amenity efficiencies. When we bring back the next rendition of the updated capital improvement projects, we'll be able to we could go through in more detail with the committee, but what we're looking for is just that financial picture of what we could put forward.
The process that you described, those priorities, I fully support. Comments?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to it is last session, we came up with a number that is an emergency response reserve number.
Right.
That we would have to keep on the books in the bank in case something like this happens again. We have to make sure that we can fund ourselves while we wait for FEMA or whoever FEMA is going to be.
I think that's part of Devon's plan that you just talked about, is we need to formalize that. We talked about it in the past, and we actually built it up,
Yes.
but we haven't set a policy in place. And I think, I agree, we should. Absolutely.
Do we have a process for how we decide what falls into each of these categories of restoration, failures, et cetera?
You want me to- Okay, so when we were looking at this as staff, Francis had asked us to come together with all of the capital needs that the city has and what is our infrastructure. So when we were going through it, we were looking at whether or not they were related to the storm and a restore, or whether or not they were an amenity or an enhancement. So when we bring this back, we could put on there so you can see this is restore with resiliency, and then these are amenities or enhancement projects that are included in the budget, if that would be helpful.
That would be helpful for me,
Oh,
not knowing the
yeah,
history.
historically, I'm familiar with a lot of these projects. And we also used to meet as a committee to discuss among ourselves what we think this priority should be. So we might want to schedule a meeting just other than these meetings on the schedule, just for this team to discuss what we think the priorities should be and maybe numerically rank those, but following your direction, which I agree with.
So I'm hoping the next meeting, you're going to get more detail on capital,
Okay,
and we can incorporate maybe some of that process for you.
okay,
Staff will use their expertise and the situational analysis to tell you what we think it should be, and then I think we'll have you react back to us
fine.
based on this sort of overarching policy direction, and then we can go from there. And it's certainly helpful, even on the amenity side, to understand, if we had the money, what's important to you, because we can't do all things at the
Yes.
same time, so.
Understand.
What's driving the need to make a decision on this second bullet point today?
So what we were going to do is this presentation will go to the commission next. And so the thought was having this finance budget review committee acting as an advisory role to the commission. Whether you agree with staff or don't agree with staff is typically just the understanding and the format that helps them understand that, you all have gone through this presentation, and you might say, we agree, or, we'd like to see this different. And so it's just providing that opportunity for you and for the commission to understand what your role was in it.
Well, I appreciate the level of detail. It's
Do
really
we,
well done.
do we as a committee agree with the direction the city has proposed to take forward with this budgeting process, including the direction for capital improvement projects?
I agree. It's hard for me, based on this, to say, yes, I agree with it 100%.
Oh, yeah,
But the direction, as far as the direction, yes, I
definitely support the direction.
yeah.
I do as well.
That's generally what we're seeking right now, so we don't get so far ahead of you, and then we find out we were off track.
No, do what we need to do and look at those things that we have to do and things we don't have to do right away.
Thank you.
Can I say I second that?
Yes.
Any audience comments? No audience comments. I believe, do we have any audience? Or is this?
This is all staff.
They're all city employees.
Can I ask, Ms. Schmidt, how do you feel about your policies and procedures in the finance department?
Well, that's part of the reason why we have a lot of opportunity for us moving forward, is that we need to set forward reserve policies. We need to set forward a good investment policy, and we need those 10-year plans with operating and capital, because right now, to date, we don't have those pieces and parts for our policies. So that's an area where we're headed, and we absolutely need to improve upon those.
What kind of approval, if you're getting to the point where you have a contractor see the invoice, who approves it? I'm assuming all of them approve it. And then is there a secondary approval? Because I know in the past there was an issue, there's been issues that, okay, there wasn't that secondary approval, and there was really no way to catch it. There wasn't a secondary approval. Like, what's the approval process of paying invoices?
So the approval process today is, yes, these department heads or their administrative assistants will put it forward, a director will sign off on it, then it comes to our procurement team, and then it comes to myself and then Francis. So there's a lot of approvals currently.
Excellent. Thank you.
And how does your software handle that? Is it all?
It's a workflow.
Okay,
Yep.
very good.
Yep. So we have an audit trail, and yes,
Do you scan in the invoices, or is it?
the invoices are attached.
That's all I have.
Okay.
I'd say you're giving me an opportunity to publicly recognize Mr. Taylor out in the audience. He's our procurement manager who was hired about 2 years ago, maybe a little less. 2 years. Yeah, I got it right. Those are probably our most solid policies in finance right now. So we've seen significant improvement and feeling pretty confident on those policies. So thank you for asking. And I want to
Thank you very
give
much.
him accommodations for helping us get it straightened out.
Questions, comments?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.